Hi guys, welcome to the J&J Boxing Podcast. I'm here with Jordan Henderson and we're going to talk about the big fight card in Saudi Arabia commencing this weekend. So we're going to start off with the main event, Joshua versus Wallin. What's your thoughts on the fight?
It's an interesting fight. It's an intriguing fight. Obviously, you'll have the pleasure of seeing it live, being the channel's eyes and ears on the ground. Um, I'm looking forward to it because it's the Southpaw Orthodox. I'm a boxing nerd, so I enjoy that little sort of battle between the Orthodox and the Southpaw. But getting into the nitty and gritty of the fight, I think that Joshua and Wallin have history. So that obviously, I think that will play a factor into the fight. And I think that Otto Wallin, he is kind of like a steady Eddie. He's kind of like good, competent at everything, but not a master of anything. I think Joshua has been in with a better southpaw in Alexander Usyk. I think that Joshua now, people could say who's a harder puncher, Usyk or Wallin. I actually think it's comparable. But then I do think, Charles Martin, people might laugh at him, but I think he's a bigger puncher than Otto Wallin. I'm not saying Otto Wallin would lose to mine, but I think mine's a bigger puncher. So he's been in with a bigger punching southpaw, in my opinion. He's been in with a superior southpaw overall, in my opinion, in Usyk. Second fight against Usyk was very, very close. I think people run away with narratives when they hear commentators, and sometimes I like to watch boxing with no commentary. People get carried away with the narratives, and I think it just seems to be the theme. Oh, Joshua got schooled in both fights. I think Usyk won the first fight comfortably, but the second fight, I scored it very close. So if Joshua's running Usyk close, in my opinion, now he's got a plainer puzzle to solve in Wallin. He's got a bigger target in Wallin. I honestly think that even if Joshua, people say that he hasn't looked his best for some time, I don't think this is the guy to cause an upset against him. What are your thoughts on that?
Like you said, I think you summed it up perfectly about Otto Wallin. Otto Wallin's a steady Eddie, good fighter. I'm not trying to diminish anything he's done. I think he's a 6 to 7 out of everything. Good boxer. In terms of power, he's a physically strong guy. We saw that against Dominic Brazil. Maybe not in terms of punches, but in terms of clinching, like you alluded to before, he's a slashing puncher, so you've got to watch out on that. Wallin's a good fighter, and if you're not on your game that day, he has a chance to beat you and upset you. Although he didn't beat Tyson Fury, we saw him give Fury. Okay, we saw him give Fury big problems, not massive problems that people try to allude to. Oh, Fury nearly lost a fight because round by round, if you score it, it wasn't actually that close of a fight. I probably scored it 8-4, 9-3, being generous. But I think Wallin just had a big moment when he cut Fury, when he, I wouldn't say bust Fury, but stung him. So Wallin's a good fighter, and if you're not on your A game, he will beat you, and he will make it very uncomfortable at least. Like we have seen him against Gassiev. I know Gassiev's not a full-blown heavyweight, but we've seen him against good opposition and he's beat them. We've seen him against bigger people than himself against Brazil. Yeah, wasn't a knockout, but comfortably beat Brazil. So what Otto Wallin's a good fighter. I would say he's in and around the top 10-ish. I would say you have to say that. So it's a good fight for Joshua. Obviously, me, I'm always gonna be biased in this situation. Like I can't 100% not be biased, but I genuinely feel like this is a perfect fight in terms of getting an opponent who's rated because it's like not like, oh, the public don't rate Wallin. I actually think it's the opposite. I actually think the public is overrating Wallin. I really think this is a really good fight for Joshua, and I think he's gonna make a statement in this fight.
Yeah, I agree, man. And nothing wrong with being biased, man. If my cousin was, a top level heavyweight, I'd be biased as well. So, but even, talking about the styles as well, I don't think Wallin fully utilizes the southpaw element. I don't. It's strange. You see Usyk, he clearly does with his lead hand. I don't think Wallin fully utilizes his southpaw stance. Um, but I do think that in this fight, when I look at the styles, when I look at possible outcomes, I can see Wallin nicking a few rounds maybe early, but I can see him sort of winning the fight but losing the war. So like he gasses normally.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
I,
that's one point that people are not picking up. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think in one of his biggest fights, we've seen him gas. Against Fury, we've seen him gas. Against Brazil, we've seen him gas. Against Gassiev, we've seen him gas. And I don't think people are picking it up. So that's a good point that you made there, 100%.
yeah, man, he does gas against. Brazil was coming on strong, and Brazil. I don't think he's got the explosiveness, but if he did, Wallin was there on the ropes to be hit. I think the fact that he doesn't utilize his southpaw style. I'm not saying he doesn't like at all, but not enough. I feel that gives Joshua less of a puzzle. Um, I feel that Joshua, it's the same story that I keep saying. He's got a big target in front of him. He's got a target that tends to slow down. And I think stylistically, Joshua will take center ring. I think Wallin will voluntarily give up real estate and get on his bike. And I think that he will nick a few rounds to win, like as I say, like winning the war and winning the fight, but losing the war. He will have to put in so much to nick rounds. Whereas Joshua, I think he may plant himself in the middle of the ring. He may, even give up a few rounds just to work Wallin out. And
Like
I
he did
just,
against Hellenius.
mm-hmm. And I think that Wallin will tire. And I think that Joshua, once you see Wallin's back against the ropes, I think that unlike against Hellenius, Joshua won't fear the power of Wallin. And I think he will look to take more chances. And I think that you see, Tyson Fury, I know this is kind of going, it's not going off track. I've got a point like this sort of leads into a point I'm making. Tyson Fury, I believe, struggles against Southpaws. I think the fact that he turns Southpaw is almost like a disguise for the fact that he struggles against Southpaws.
Yeah,
But the point I'm saying with that, the point I'm going with, where I'm going with this is, I actually think Anthony Joshua may be underrated with his tactics against Southpaws. Um, Usyk, it was the southpaw stance, but it was also the size of Usyk punching down and
exactly
his
that. I'm
his
happy that you said that. Exactly that.
and his cruiserweight sort of agility and agileness. That was part of the problem for Joshua. But he was still even in the first fight, like when Joshua didn't use his lead hand and actually just led with the right hand, he was catching Usyk like quite a few times, and he actually hurt Usyk in one round. But I don't know if Joshua noticed it. And sometimes like I've sparred before and I've hurt someone, and then the coach like, you hurt him. And I didn't even realize. So it can happen like that. But I thought Joshua actually hurt Usyk in the first fight, and maybe I don't know. I'm not him. Maybe he noticed, maybe he didn't. But he was catching Usyk with straight lead right hands. Against Charles Martin, you could see the ring IQ. He knew what to do against the southpaw. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong. Camarel, who he fought in the amateurs, southpaw.
Yeah,
Um, so and obviously he fought the other southpaw. So yeah, he fought Usyk, he fought Martin, and he's fought Wallin before. I think Joshua is actually pretty handy against southpaws.
exactly. I like the
Um,
point that you said regarding Usyk. I don't actually think it was completely the southpaw element. I do think it was the movement. Usyk wasn't in front of him and he's punching down. Like Joshua's struggled with short opponents against Takam, against Povetkin. And what's one thing they all had in common? They weren't sitting in front of him. I don't actually think it's a southpaw element. Against Martin, like you said, he knew what he needed to do. That Martin walked straight into that right hand, and I can see Wallin doing the same thing. What Wallin does as well with his jab, he doesn't commit his jab, he kind of flicks it out. And I see maybe two or three jabs landing, and Joshua just landing a solid jab and following it with a right hand. So I don't actually think it's the southpaw element. I think a lot of these commentators and these pundits on the TV are very lazy. Their analyzation of Joshua in terms of what he struggles against. It's not the southpaw element, it's movers.
yep.
Otto Wallin is a mover, but he's not a fleet-footed mover like Usyk. I think just because he's on his toes doesn't mean that he's a fleet-footed mover like that. I actually think Wallin moves with his chin hanging in the air against Gassiev on the ropes. He just had his chin. He was completely oblivious for his body, had his chin hanging in the air. Like Wallin makes a lot of mistakes. So I actually, like I said, I'm gonna say this again. I really like this fight for Joshua for two reasons. Firstly, he's not expected to blow Wallin out of the water, so there's not pressure on him. Okay, boxing fans knew the Franklin fight wasn't going to be super easy, but a lot of people, casuals, thought, oh, maybe 2, 3 rounds. Hellenius, everyone thought he'll get a knockout, which he did, but there was always pressure on him to finish those guys relatively early. With Wallin, there's not pressure on him to finish him. Like, a lot of people actually think he'll go to points, so I think it's only a win-win situation for this fight. So I'm really looking forward to the fight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. And I'm going to ask you now. I'm going to get down into the stylistic breakdowns. How do you think stylistically this fight is going to play out, and then finish off with how you think the fight's gonna how the fight's gonna end, or what you think is going to happen in the fight?
So one thing I've noticed with Joshua over the years, he's definitely become more economical within his movements, with his punches. He's not wasting a lot of things anymore. We saw against Helenius, it might have been boring, but you see, back in the day, he used to waste energy with like maybe erratic movements or combinations out of range. He doesn't do that anymore. He's a much more smarter, ethical boxer in terms of he doesn't waste his punches, doesn't waste his movements. So with Wallin, I can see him maybe making it awkward for the first 3 rounds, not really landing anything, but doing more. So by default, he might nick the rounds. But you would never think, oh, well, he might win this on points. You'll just be thinking, okay, Josh is trying to set something up. So I do see the first 3 rounds being relatively, not really tricky, but relatively tricky. Awkward is the right word, I think. I think the first 3 rounds will be awkward. Then I think within round 1 to round 3, Joshua needs to land something for Wallin to respect him, because Wallin's a very ballsy fighter and he's a very dirty fighter. If he gets into a rhythm, he'll make it a long night for everyone. So I think you need to land something solid within round 1 to round 3 to really offset Wallin, which I think he will. Then from round 4 to round 6, I think Joshua will be progressively landing that good straight jab. I see Wallin walking into a big right hand. I don't think he'll drop straight away, but he'll become more cautious. And we have seen Wallin tire over the long distance from round 8 to round 10-ish. And I see Joshua getting a stoppage from round 8 to round 10. He has got
Yeah,
a good trainer in his corner, and Joey Gamache from New York. So I'm expecting one is coming with a very good game plan. But there's one thing coming with a game plan, like Mike Tyson said. There's always a plan until you get hit. So I do expect the fight to be competitive in terms of scoring. But like you said, I think Wallin could be winning the fight, but he won't win the war.
yeah. I definitely agree. I concur with you that I think that if I'll tell you, I don't want to spoil my breakdown. Yeah, the breakdown, man. I feel like stylistically, this is kind of made for Joshua. I think people overrate Otto Wallin. I think the Fury fight flattered him. I think the Otto Wallin, I think his work, his body of work post the Fury fight kind of backs that up. I think the fight will play out as follows. I think Joshua will be center ring. I think that Otto Wallin will be on the peripheral. I think that he might nick a few rounds on his bike, just that peppering. I think that Joshua may just take a look at him. I think that Joshua will be trying to get his lead foot on the outside and trying to control the lead hand of Otto Wallin. I think Wallin will be so hyper almost. I can see it. I can see him being a little bit hyper to the point where he's not even thinking about lead hand control or getting his foot on the outside. He's just trying to pepper away and bag rounds, because I get this impression from Wallin that winning rounds is sort of he can
Paramount.
win. Yeah, is victory, like winning the round. I get the impression that Wallin, his confidence kind of illuminates into a sort of it comes across to me as his confidence is like a hyper confidence, like when they came face to face, not a composed confidence. I don't think he's going to be composed. I think he's going to be quite hyper. I think that he's going to be winning the first few rounds, maybe. I think he's going to get tired as the fight goes on. And I think Joshua, as you said, he's going to be more economical. I think that Joshua will probably start landing his jab. I think he probably will do that. I think that he may even target Wallin's body, depending on the weight that Wallin comes in at. And I'm expecting Wallin to come in quite heavy. I've seen
Are you?
the advert where
Okay.
Joshua and it came on my TV today. There was a picture of Joshua with no shirt on, and Wallin with no shirt on, and they were sitting on like a chair, like sort of promoting the fight. And Wallin looked quite big to me, in the belly area. So I'm expecting Wallin to come in even if he does try and lose weight, I think he is going to come in bigger than we've seen him say this, at least at the start of his career, bigger than when he fought Fury. I think Joshua
Okay,
may
yeah,
start to aim for the body. I think that Wallin will slow down. I think Wallin's feet will slow down. I think that's when he will stop winning rounds in this fight. I think that's when he's going to start getting caught more. And I can see a stoppage in favor of Anthony Joshua, whether it be Wallin gets put on the floor or he's on the ropes taking punches, and the ref jumps in and stops it. I just want to say before we sort of finish up with the video, or if you've got any more closing points, is that I can also see when I look at the outcomes, and I've spoken to you about this. Part of the reason I'm picking Joshua is because I can see Joshua winning by stoppage. I can see him winning on points, both legitimate. But I can also see him winning like where a lot of people might say actually he didn't win that fight, but because Saudi Arabia want to make the Joshua Wilder fight, and I'm not saying it as a criticism towards him, that's not him in the that this is kind of outside of him, but when I'm looking at who's going to win the fight,
yeah,
I see that is another thing to put on the side of Joshua. Like if there is a chance that he underperforms, or which can happen to any fighter, it's almost like, well, if he wins, if I'm scoring the fight and I score it 115, 113 to Otto Wallin, he's not going to get that. He's not going to get that. Now, for him to win on points, he would have to, in my opinion, I'd have to score it 118 to 111 for him to get like a 116, 114, like in Saudi Arabia.
yeah,
So worst case scenario, so I'm just looking at probabilities. So I can see Joshua winning on by knockout, which is what I'm going with. I can see Joshua winning on points. I can also see Joshua winning a controversial points win. Now, on Otto Wallin's side, can I see him knocking Joshua out? Probably not. He hasn't shown anything like that in his record so far. People say Joshua's not got a great chin. I don't think his chin's as bad as people make out. Um, I don't. I don't think he's got an iron jaw. I don't think he's got a David Tua chin, but I don't think he's got a Frank Bruno chin. I don't think he's got a David. In fact, I know he's not got a David Price chin. Um, so I think people exaggerate the chin, saying Joshua's chinny. Um, so to go into sort of the reason I say that is to say this: what in Otto Wallin's record so far suggests that he's going to go in there and knock Anthony Joshua out, plus the eye test. Box rec and eye test, I can't see anything.
yeah,
Um, Points, as I've already said, he's gonna have to climb a mountain and then another mountain to win on points. I can't see it. I
yeah,
can't see it. I just can't see him winning this fight. I can see him being competitive. Um, Joshua needs to stay on his A game. Joshua needs to make sure he doesn't get cut. But objectively speaking, I can't see it. There's other fighters where I could see a way for them to win.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
like if I'm looking at mine, Bacoli, I don't. He's not an amazing fighter, but he bangs quite hard. Even Dillian White, when that fight got made, I was saying it's interesting because White can punch. Even Robert Helenius, I was like, is that sensible? They're making that fight because Helenius can
just
bang,
as Hellenius had the threat of being a massive puncher. With Wallin, he's not feather fisted, don't get me wrong, but I don't worry that he's a one because it's not even that Wallin's not strong, it's the way he throws his punches. He throws his punches in a very amateurish style. He fights to point score. He doesn't fight to knock you out. And if Wallin does that, I think that's worse for him because he leaves himself in the center of the line more. If he wants to put his foot down and actually hurt Joshua, it leaves him open for counter shots just because he's going to be in front of him. So I don't see Wallin getting a stoppage unless someone is knackered. But I don't see, let's just say someone's fresh. I don't see him stopping a lot of people at all. At all.
No, I mean he couldn't stop uh Adrian Granat, who got done in one by Dimitrenko. I just don't see it. So final predictions, I'm going with Joshua by stoppage, and yourself.
Yeah, I'm going Joshua by stoppage. If I had to say a round, I'm going to say round 7 to round 9. No, round 8 to round 10.
Fair
Actually, no,
enough.
no, I'm gonna go back. Round 7 to round 9, stoppage. Not controversial. I think a referee stoppage on the ropes or can't make the count. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, those are our predictions. Let us know what you think. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so you get a notification when we make a new video, and also check out our other previews for the Saudi card. And with that, we'll see you on the next one.